All right, y'all, welcome to In the Stars, a podcast where I, Eli Gomez, talk about all things astrology and give commentary on the world. I am super pumped to bring my astrology mentor, Laurie Rivers, on the podcast once again. I have been studying astrology under her going on for 4 years now, and I have been in a one-on-one mentorship with her for now 1 year, officially. I am extremely grateful and honored to be where I am now, practicing astrology professionally here at Starseek Astrology, surrounded by all of the really amazing people who I am thankful to have as friends and colleagues, both in my personal life and from the awake space. I am also honored to be in my mentorship with Laurie, who is bestowing all of the wisdom, techniques, and skills of the trade, both from her 3 decades of experience and the nuggets of wisdom passed down to her from her mentors. I do not take for granted the responsibility of continuing on the astrology legacy of her and her teachers and her teachers' teachers. With that being said, I welcome back to the show, Laurie Rivers. We're back at it again with Laurie Rivers, my astrology teacher. Welcome back to the show.
Hello, and thank you for having me. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing very well right now. I'm better than I was 3 months ago. I could say that. If you're in my
Awesome.
Patreon, you'd know. Just saying. This last spring was a wild ride. Obviously, we are in a very different place in the world now than when we were last time you were on, which was
Yeah.
one of my very first episodes. I had on
hmm
Tracy last week. She was my first
hmm
guest. And then we have you on. You were my second guest, and so now it's almost
hmm
like first full circle moments. We're
Full
bringing back
circle.
all the rollbacks. We
hmm
are in a time where we are seeing protests for things that people probably wouldn't have been protesting before.
hmm
Like we're seeing in LA. We're
hmm
seeing people actually really starting to forcibly wake up
Yeah.
to major injustices happening in the world that back
hmm
6 months ago we wouldn't have seen.
Right.
Because back
hmm
6 months ago, what we were seeing was, there's obviously a divide between, like on the left, between liberal and progressive. But
hmm
now we're seeing people who are liberal saying things that are very progressive, and we're like, what the actual hell is going on here? Like, what made you change your mind? Did it finally take you this long? We're seeing a lot of that. It's also causing a little bit of anxiety in a lot of people.
hmm
And I know you're a mundane astrologer. I'm getting into that place, and whenever we see times of systemic change like this, people
hmm
tend to get really up in arms. It's times like this where where we are really needed as astrologers to kind of
Yes,
help give
absolutely.
people. Yeah, it's
hmm
kind of where we need to start helping people focus on what they can do in their communities and in their lives to make an impact on the world. So that way they're not feeling overwhelmed about all of the chaos that the world is in. So, what would you say is a great way for us to be able to help other people who may not know anything about astrology to be able to help them maybe like quell some of that fear, some of that anxiety about times of systemic change that we're in?
Well, to be fair, we're in the greatest time of systemic change humanity's seen in 4,500 years. So there really hasn't been quite times like this in anyone's like great 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 grandparents living memory. So it's going to be disconcerting no matter what. I think, especially in the United States, people have lived relatively sheltered lives and relatively privileged lives compared to especially developing nations in a lot of cases. I've been warning people since the 90s about these times. And as an astrologer, honestly, I learned not to speak the astrology and to literally just say, give people actual strategies. Because that's actually what an astrologer's job is. An astrologer's job is not to evangelize astrology, it's not to teach everyone astrology. Not everyone will or can be an astrologer, just like not everybody's going to be a nuclear physicist. But we can understand it at a layman's level. And so it's more about giving people tools. And so that's why any good astrologer is going to have other background training. So I always suggest doing other professional development, whether it's in communications, whether it's understanding psychology, anthropology, sociology, understanding how history works, not just having opinions about it, but understanding how history unfolds through time, having other skill sets, whether it's cooking, gardening. In fact, cooking and gardening and astrology have been hand in hand for many, many, many a millennia. In fact, the Farmer's Almanac uses a form of astrometeorology to make some of their predictions. And so I would say the greatest favor anyone who connects with the public as a messenger or a teacher in any modality would be to, and it's going to sound really mean, Eli, but don't put up with people throwing their anxiety in your direction. A lot of this is not coming out of the blue. It's coming out of the oblivious. People have, they abdicated their responsibility a long time ago. Now, as a young person, it's a different story. But if they're older people like myself, this is not our first rodeo. You know, it's the same, it's on repeat. And now it's coming to a head. As young people, I would say if you're going to work with people like yourself, you work with people who are in university. It can be so easy to wonder why the hell you're there. It's hard enough under other circumstances, right? You get it all hyped up when you're growing up and you show up and you're like, this is it. This is what it's supposed to be hard, you know? And they just want me to read all these. I could have read all these books on my own. Why the hell am I here, right? Don't give up hope and take advantage of every resource you've got available to you, because we need educated people who can communicate and communicate with compassion. Compassion does not mean we indulge panic. So, if you've ever looked at my TikTok comment sections,
Oh yeah.
yeah, and I
Oh yeah.
don't indulge it, and that can make me look like a right old ass. There's a reason I don't indulge it. One, it's a lot on me. So you need to take care of you first. When we're making predictions, as you're learning now, I've had a few very late night, oh my gods, from you. And I'm like, okay, let's talk about it. Let's talk it through. I think people need to stop being so selfish. And Alan Oken even wrote that in his Alan Oken's Complete Astrology. Okay.
Mhm.
He wrote about the what about me clients, where it's always very personal and self-centered instead of, I've been getting asked a lot, will war come to American soil? And my response is, why should we be the exception?
And also, aren't we already kind of seeing it? We're seeing it in
Mhm.
more of a, but the energy is still there. It's still very present.
Yeah. It's euphemistic right now, but if something were to occur, but I think people don't understand how the world works. I studied international relations. That was my academic training. Well, my job was to learn how to plan a war, right? And what I wanted to do was avoid wars. That's why I went into it. I understand what other countries have capacity of. Americans in general aren't educated in that way. And I had to leave the country to get a good education in that without the American lens, right, of propaganda. Most people have only had what they see on TV. TikTok is kind of helping in that. Instagram kind of helps in that. There's stuff that comes in that helps broaden the awareness and the understanding. But I think the biggest thing we can do is teach strategies on how to develop independent critical thinking and how not to be manipulated, and teach esoteric processes or metaphysical processes for mindfulness. And in this chaos, there's a lot of opportunity. So if I was a young person, if I was speaking to a young person, I know a lot of your audience is, I would say you are the hope. The world's future is not on your shoulders. It's on all of our shoulders. I get really mad at Gen Xers that are like, go Gen Z, we're right behind you. I'm like, no, no, no. You stand in front of those kids and you take the hits because you know how. You take the hit. It's not a young person's job to take the hit. You didn't make the freaking mess. We couldn't stop the mess, though. That's what people don't realize is we were really outnumbered, because people had access to birth control for the first time, and so our families tended to be smaller. So we were those of us who were trying to make this not happen years ago are sitting here going, "Yeah, said so. Here we are. It won't be global thermonuclear war." Which is what most people think of as World War III. World War III, we've kind of been in since 9/11. It's been economic, it's been technological, and you can see the United States has obviously been infiltrated by foreign influence. And we're kind of watching two different camps fight in this moment as of June 18th of 2025. We're seeing the potential Russian influence fighting with the potential Israeli influence. And it's quite fascinating to watch as an observer. I know it's scary. It's scary for me too. I have family all over the world and family that can be deeply impacted by this because they're in Bahrain. My own kids can be deeply impacted by this. And fear does not help us. It paralyzes us. So I think the best thing an astrologer can do is show pathways of opportunity. Like we've got a great, I think this is probably being published after the fact, but great new moon in June. Great. That sets up the 2026 on an individual level. In early July, July 3rd slash 4th, depending where you are in the world, we've got Venus conjunct Saturn with no challenging aspects to it. That's a really, really favorable transit. There is good stuff. And so what the people who want to the people who want to control us, they want us to be afraid, they want us to have no hope, they want us to be so scared we just say yes sir, yes ma'am, and we fall in line, or we give up, or we take another tranquilizing substance that robs us of emotion and joy. And I'm not saying don't take your meds. Of course, if you need meds, take your meds. But a lot of times we medicate ourselves, whatever substance it is, whether it's prescribed or unprescribed, because we don't feel like we have any power or hope, and we want to numb ourselves. And I think that's the most dangerous thing we can do. I think we need to greet each other with humanity right now. I think the astrology is very clear that those that use their minds, and I don't just mean being nerdy, but just think about things, like call bullshit when you see it, but you don't have to call it at the person saying it. Just know it's bullshit and go, what can I do? Now, here's a strategy that I actually use personally whenever I'm overwhelmed, and don't think I don't get overwhelmed, right? When I get overwhelmed, for me personally, the best thing I can do is lean into a path of service. So, as you know, lightening the energy up, right? It's okay to have gallows humor. It's okay to laugh at a funeral. I've done it plenty. If you wear a big hat and gloves and you dress really retro and you put your head down, people think you're crying.
I'm gonna remember that. I'm gonna
I'm
remember to
not
do that.
lying. I'm not lying. I'm telling you, oh my God, I've done it a couple times when it was good. I wore the big hat because I was a terrible pastor. But he sounded like Reverend Lovejoy from The Simpsons. Not
Oh my
kidding.
god.
Yeah, it was really bad. So it's okay to have a sense of humor in the ridiculousness. It's okay to want to check out and just play some video games. I will play like Lego Fortnite and just bash things just because I don't bash things in real life. It's okay to do all of that. And then the next thing is put your energy into something creative, because there's people making uncreative choices right now. War is an uncreative choice. It's destructive.
It's misuse of physical energy.
It
Like,
is.
because all physical energy is, it's just a whole bunch of potential energy ready to be
Right? Yep.
executed. And
Yeah.
when you just shoot your arrow and you don't aim, that's what you get.
Yep.
Whenever people sit down and actually strategize and think, okay, I'm upset. What should I do? Should I talk about my feelings and journal them so I can figure out kind of what's going on here? Like really kind of not necessarily fall in love with the problem, because that's a very entrepreneurial thing to say, but more so, how can I really figure out this problem and not just just spew my arrow and not aim, you know, because
Right. Well, I would just be even more simplistic. And this is where I had a really good friend of mine who was a shaman tell me when I was in a big life change. He said, "Laurie, you need to get dumber and dumber." And I was like, that is something that's very difficult for me to do. And he goes, "I know, that's why you need to do it." And I understood what he meant. And it was beyond get out of your head. It was stop trying to solve the problems because there are problems we cannot solve. They will drive you crazy. But put yourself into a physical activity. Garden. Go pull weeds. It's like cut wood, carry water, right? Chop wood, carry water. It is scrub the floor, do the dishes, do your laundry, do something so incredibly boring and mundane because what that's going to do is it's going to retool your nervous system and then you don't have to figure out the problem. The solution starts to come in. And again, big world problems, you're never going to change them unless you have the ambition to move into the circles that are there and you're watching right now. So, what is one thing we know about DJT? He doesn't like war. He doesn't like war at all. Now, he doesn't have the cognitive ability to make a decision right now. If you watch, if you've been around elderly people, you know his brain is kind of mashed potatoes. But he'll say one thing, and then hours later, there's a True Social or tweet written with really good grammar, so it's obviously not him saying the exact opposite of words he said. Even when you work up to that top space, you will find out very quickly that there are those who are going to make it so you don't have all that power, right? So you have to look at where you do have power. And that is in your local community. You don't have to be friends with everybody. You don't have to like everybody, but you can pick up litter. You can repurpose things. You can make sure somebody's got food. You can make sure you've got food. Take care of you, not in a selfish way, but in a way that gives you the fuel to be of service in some way. The more of us, I think we saw with the No Kings protests, what happens, people are not, you're not as alone as you think you are, you know? And watch the megas right now. They're starting to go like, what the hell? Right? Because a lot of the people, not the weird wackadoodle ones, like there's some people that are beyond hope, but a lot of the average everyday folks were sick of the status quo, and it was a protest, and so they're like, "Whoa, wait a minute!" And I think we all have a lot more in common than we do different, even though we might use different words. There are obviously going to be some major philosophical and theological differences, but at everybody, and this is what I learned traveling the world, and it made me a much better astrologer. So I went to 23 countries, 4 continents by the time I was 25, and I started at 18. So I lived out of a suitcase. Everywhere I went, regardless of language, regardless of country, culture, everybody wanted somewhere safe to sleep at night. If you went to someone's house and their mother was there, she made the best whatever specialty dish, right? So everybody's mom, in general, I know not everybody because my mom doesn't cook either, but your grandma, your mom, your dad, your auntie, there's always somebody in the family that makes the best spaghetti or the best shrimp salad or the best futu or the best saluna or the best mechbus or the best, dolma, whatever it is, wherever you are. They love their children in general, okay, or claim to. People want to feel safe, and they are easily manipulated to feel unsafe. And the more we can just come together, and that starts inside ourselves and checking our own privilege, checking our biases, checking how we interact with other people, check how we demonize people or belief systems or what have you. Because honestly, Every human being wants to feel safe. And they easily feel unsafe because of our amygdalas, right? So I'm gonna say start at home. And I know that was a windy way around it, but that's the one thing I noticed. Because I didn't care about like the important people or I stayed with really local people. I met billionaires too along the way. They were far less interesting. It was just everyday people. And they loved their families. They had their dramas, partly because you get bored, right? Recognize that boredom. And it's not going to be boring for a while. We're going to be living in interesting times for quite a while. So you can't expect a new month to make things different. If the trajectory of the energy is explosive, if the trajectory of the energy is like we're all on Tinder hooks right now, it's going to continue to be very intense. That does not mean there isn't hope. And the one thing I worry about with young people isn't because I don't think young people are smart. I think they're really smart, but there is a lack of perspective. You've lived X amount of years on the planet and you've seen X amount of things, but you haven't seen the cyclical nature of it. Oh, yeah, here we are again. You're experiencing it for the first time. And it's easy to lose hope. And I lost a lot of friends in the 90s because of that, you know, because they felt hopeless or they couldn't see the ray of light in the distance. And heck, I could have lost myself. It's just I'm a Scorpio rising and I don't get to give up. But there's no reason to give up on you or your future. But you do have to let go of some of the old social programming and cultural narratives of how life is supposed to be and realize you have the opportunity to create that pathway for yourself. That's what I have to say about that.
And that's a great answer. A great thing to say about that. All right, y'all. I'm going to interrupt the conversation with Laurie Rivers for just a moment to tell you all about the Starseek Astrology semi-annual sale. Twice a year, I discount all readings and services to the public for a very limited time to show you all some of the benefits that patrons get 100% of the time. I even throw in some semi-annual exclusive readings and services as well, only available during the semi-annual sale period. Patrons obviously got first dibs at those exclusive readings and services earlier this month, but now they're released to the public. Exclusive readings I am offering are 30-minute consultations, relationship readings, and year ahead readings. Year ahead readings have closed, so the only exclusive readings and services open now are the 30-minute consultations and relationship readings, which I only have a few spots left for each. I also have, of course, the classic 1 hour consultations and 1 hour natal chart readings as well. All of those are on sale too. So if you are new to astrology, or maybe have been debating on getting a reading, now is the time to do it, because I won't be doing the sale for quite some time unless you are a member of the Starseek Astrology Patreon, where you get access to these sale prices all the time. You can book a session with me at sale price, no code needed now, at starseekastrology.com, click readings and services, and then click my name, and you can see all the readings and services that I offer. The sale is open now until June 30th. And let's get back to it with Laurie Rivers.
And you can't rest your self-esteem on what other people think about you. You can't rest your self-esteem in how people speak about you. If you if you go search me on TikTok, there's a whole lot of Astro Lori lied, Astro Lori is a fraud, and I didn't search myself for any other reason than I was looking for an old Tucker Carlson roast I'd done, and I see it. There's like 5, 6 really mean searches.
They pop up
Well,
on my feed from time to time.
that's great.
Yeah. But it's mainly just because, like, they see that you and I are friends, and so, like, TikTok thinks, oh, well, these people have your name in their captions, so you must be interested. And I'm like, no, the hell I'm not. But okay.
And it's people who don't understand jack shit about astrology.
And it's people who don't understand jack shit about the American system.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. It's
And
people who want their wishes to happen and what they want to happen. They don't
and
understand
how
about the
they want
system.
it to happen has to go
Hmm.
exactly how they have it in their brain. And
Hmm.
let me tell you, this is kind of what gave me hope because on campus, I was walking Brooklyn through what I was seeing in the astrology. I'm like, hey, this is not helping him. And this was like on election night. And she's like, okay, that makes me feel better. I'm like, hey, you might not want to feel better because it's still going to be very, very, let's just say it. There's people playing hanky panky behind the hanky panky's back. So you
Yep.
might want to hold off on feeling better, kind of just take your attention away from the national level, focus on the local level,
Yep.
which will then kind of help reevaluate the top level and the national level.
Hmm.
So, whenever I said, hey, it was going to be litigious, what people said was like, oh, you mean that he's not going to win?
Well, and I said he wasn't going to be president. I still hold with he isn't. I think there was election interference. That is becoming more and more obvious. It is litigious.
Well, what
Um,
I said
mhm,
that I was like, hey, I'm looking at January, and this was in November. I'm like, hey, I'm looking at
mhm,
January, and I see people telling on themselves. And then, quite
mhm.
literally, January 1st comes around, and Elon Musk starts talking about how if it wasn't for him, Trump would have lost, and that he fixed those voting machines in Pennsylvania, and all of those things. And then that was when just about every single person on campus who was like, oh, astrology's crap, and they're like, oh my God.
Yeah,
You
and
you
then
actually you did say something like that. And I'm like, yeah, now you see the people in power, well, said power, the people who claim they have power, who have the title, does not mean that they are actually holding any amount of authority. And that's
no,
something that
the
it took
figurehead.
astrology to teach me that.
Yeah,
It took astrology to
yeah,
teach me that. So,
yep. It's yeah, understanding what power and authority actually are and how the two can be different. And I learned that just I learned it young, and astrology explained it to me later, because I'm one of those people, because I have Pluto in the 10th house. If I'm out anywhere in public, one, I never get any peace to myself because everybody is like obsessed in some way. Like people will just come sit near me. They won't talk to me. They'll be doing so, but it's like a magnetic thing. It's just really obnoxious. They'll be like, I sat here at the far end of the room to be by myself. I don't
people
want to
want to
see.
figure you out. They want to
Yeah.
figure you out.
Yeah. And, or I'll be in a store or at a national park dressed in my normal street clothes, not looking like a ranger. And they will ask me directions or the history, or they'll be like, you must work here. And so that's the 10th house. The 10th house is not your career, it's how people perceive your power or your authority. It's real and not real all at the same time. It's like your brand. Right, your brand can be authentic to you, or it can be something not authentic to you, but you can wear the brand, right?
It's just the
Um,
clothes.
yeah, it is. It's just, it's truly the perception. I never lie. I can't. I suck at it. He did not have the transits, but we would have fascism either way. We would have
Exactly.
fascism light. It would have been better messaged. We'd still see the deportations. Those were planned, obviously, before he ever came into office because it moved too quickly. That takes months to create an operation for that.
Think about it.
Mm,
Even if Kamala were to be in there, progressives did not take the House.
nope.
Let's just put it this way. I thought it was very interesting, and I was actually talking with one of my favorite professors about this because she's very interested in what I do, and when I sit in her office hours, we talk
Hmm.
about this. And I was like, I thought it was very interesting how Kamala had great transits, and then all of a sudden, election day happens, and then they just did not really go anywhere from there. So
Very bizarre.
it was very bizarre. And I
Hmm.
told that to her, and she's like, well, what do you mean? And I told her exactly what I meant. And she's like, well, that's not going to leave this room, but I believe you.
Hmm.
She said that. And I was like, okay, well, that I didn't ask you to believe me, but,
Right.
it really shows me that there's a lot of people who do understand the system. They just feel immobilized to be able to help actually solve problems because there's so much because the people who are claiming to be in power are so loud,
Yeah.
and so it's kind
That's
of
why No King's Day was really, really important, because I think so many people, especially down south, I'm not gonna lie, I got a little teary eyed watching all those protests and seeing all those signs.
I sent you the
I,
one from Little Rock, right?
you did. I was
That was
really
wild.
it's
I would that
amazing.
kind of stuff has like never been seen before, at least in Little Rock. Like that was the
And
Broadway Bridge.
wow,
That never has happened.
that is where my hope lies. Is that for all of the rhetoric and the propaganda about us being the best and blah blah blah, we also have been raised to believe there were ideals about this nation. We don't always meet the ideal, but there is ideals, and those ideals are in our founding documents. And whereas they, again, we have most often come up short with them, but the fact that people are like, no, this is not happening. To see the diversity in the crowds, age, background, socioeconomic backgrounds, that was inspiring to me. My dad went, which is hilarious because my dad never would have protested when he was young. And he's 80. And in Cody, Wyoming, for every car that flipped him off, there were 10 that honked their horns in support. It's huge. That's Wyoming, you know? So,
Yeah, Wyoming is not exactly known for their progressive behavior, so.
no, unfortunately, not anymore, but it was an extremely progressive state. It was one of the first, it was, they wouldn't join the union if women couldn't keep voting in Wyoming. You know, and that's the sadness is we've got a lot of Christo fascists in line. And that's the fight we're about to watch. Is now it's going to be between those who want to reshape the system in general, which it didn't need reshaping, just didn't need to have a chainsaw taken to it, and the Christo fascists, which is what Tucker Carlson was doing with Ted Cruz in that interview. By the way, if you're a philosophy student, or you enjoy debate, watch Tucker Carlson in his interviews. He's using the Hegelian dialectic as an amazing tool, and it's very masterful. I can't stand him. We're the same age, and I would have absolutely not been his friend growing up. But and I'm like, oh, so you wouldn't do it on Fox, but you'll do it now. But see, he's part of, I mean, he's probably compromised as well, but he's part of one faction and he's not pro Christo fascism. And so that's why he was tearing Cruz apart. And he basically let Cruz tear himself apart. Tucker has he's a Taurus with a Taurus moon, but he has a Gemini Mercury. And he has a Sag Mars, because again, we were born the same year. We both have Taurus Saturns. But it was really, really probably one of the best examples of and very deliberate setup of the Hegelian dialectic and a Gemini Mercury playing with their food. Um, I was like, could have done this when you're on Fox, asshole, instead of just taking people's money. Because
Right.
he honestly, I'm not even sure. I think he does know what he believes. And he's able to give a very strong opinion and he's able to hold it. But that Taurus energy is very, very strong and he's able to communicate very effectively. Not necessarily the way I want things communicated. But this is also something as an astrologer, and you've been learning this, you know, you have to step back from your bias and your preferences and go, I think that is a dirty, rotten scoundrel. And yet, this is a perfect example of that energy being used. It does not mean I like that person to point out how that energy is being expressed. And a lot of people cannot hear anything than you saying, oh, that's a really good example of that. They'll just hear, oh my God, you like him. And I'm like, grow the F up.
Yeah.
Just grow up. A lot of people just need the amount of dysregulation, the amount of codependency, the amount of immaturity and expecting everybody to sugarcoat everything, everybody to hold everybody else's hands. I'm like, good God, that is not compassionate. That is codependency. And I do not have time for that. I work too hard to get where I'm at. Mentally
Exactly.
and emotionally myself. So, you know, people need to grow the fuck up. Sorry. I just unless you're a little kid, then be a little kid. But
Yes.
for God's sake, I yelled at people on my podcast last week. So,
Oh, I hadn't listened yet. I'm a
well,
bad
if you need a
student.
mom lecture, you go listen to it because I was lecturing people about not letting shit get in their way.
It's very necessary. It's a very necessary thing to say, though. Like, I already know exactly what you would have said about that because, I mean,
You
we're
work
kind
with
of on the
me.
same wavelength there. But I would say that it's a very necessary thing to say, though. Like, when you are in the position of an astrologer like we are,
Mhm.
and you can literally see on a map where energy is flowing, and then you have people who who may not have emotionally matured or are not emotionally mature, and they go and give the people that they claim not to like, they give them exactly what they want because of their emotional immaturity. And that is exactly why I did the Trump podcast and my Patreon, was because
Good.
I
Glad.
gave a little bit of a lecture, because me and Spencer went and we read him to filth in a
I love
patron
that.
podcast, because we're like, hey, people wanted it and we have to talk about him, so might
I
as
love that.
well. And so we did, and I don't remember exactly what placement it was, but I was like, I kind of diverted from the plan, and I was like, look, if this right here does not explain why I have been saying don't give him unnecessary attention, focus on the actual problems. Don't focus on him, because he wants you to focus on him and not the actual problems. All right, we're going to go ahead and continue this conversation over in the Starseek Astrology Patreon, where we talk about navigating America as it stands currently. And is it really Trump world, or is it something that is completely different? Is it a whole bunch of problems that has accumulated over time that we've just as a nation just not dealt with, that's led to Trump world? Or is it actually just Trump world and he's trumping the world? I don't know. Go find out more information over on the Starseek Astrology Patreon, and definitely go check out our patron only podcast that I did with Laurie. All right, we got more coming up with Laurie Rivers. We got a great conversation about what it's like being an astrologer on social media, what are some red flags that you can see, and also just a little bit more of a humorous discussion as to what we don't like to see on social media. So stay tuned for what's coming up. As Matthew McConaughey says, all right, all right, all right, let's go ahead and do some patron shout outs. Without patrons, there is no podcast. And I would like to acknowledge every single one of you who support it monetarily. So we got Laurie, Jen, Nicole, Quinn, Matilda, another Nicole, Issy, Loremaster3000, Denise with those cute little emojis, Rose Moon, Kim, and Kirsten. Thank you all so much for supporting the podcast. We have so much fun in the Patreon. We have chats in there. We also have some pop-in comment sections on there as well too, on some of the patron-only posts. Like we have some patron-only podcasts, which by the way, there is a patron-only podcast for this episode. If y'all want to hear more about Laurie, we got lots of stuff in the Patreon about that. And we also got some really neat patron-only discounts in there as well. So like maybe if you're just somebody who's really wanting to do a whole bunch of astrology readings and you're really wanting to get into it, join the Patreon, because we want to make sure that you're getting the most bang for your buck. And patrons get all kinds of juicy discounts, even outside of the semi-annual sale. So definitely go take a look and check that out if you are interested. With that being said, let's go ahead and get back to the show. We're back with Laurie Rivers. And last week, when Tracy St. Croix was on,
Hmm.
we started talking about how there is a lot of red flag mediums and psychics online, because it's so easy to manipulate other people, because there is not necessarily a degree that you can just get and show, hey, I'm a certified, psychic, and I have a PhD in whatever. You can't really do that.
No, but I've met a lot of PhDs and a lot of subjects who weren't real bright either. So a
Exactly.
certification is only going to filter so much quality.
Yeah,
So
that is true. And I actually wrote an article about that, which did you know I had a blog?
mm. I did. I read your article that you just put out. It
It
was
was
good.
fun. It was fun to write. I knew
Yeah.
people aren't gonna really know what I'm talking about, but I put it out there because I wanted people to see a different side of me, a side of
Yeah.
me that really was developed a lot through childhood. That
Yeah.
I've
No,
kind
I
of,
like that. I enjoyed
yeah.
it.
Oh well, thank you.
Yeah.
But the article I wrote before that was about education systems and why
Mhm.
hyper standardization is actually imploding education from the inside. At least
It was done
in
on purpose to do
it
that.
was
Yeah.
done on purpose, because I'm going to tell you right now, I learned more through this mentorship between me and you than I have ever learned in any class in university or in high school or in elementary school. Like, I've learned more about being an American citizen through our conversations than in U.S. government. Well, okay, I actually had a really good U.S. government professor, so I'm not going to say that. But I will say that just in general, like
Well,
in granting,
Socratic method is a very effective method, but it's not efficient for an industrialized system. So
right.
that would be why. Thank you, Eli. I'm going to tear up. So.
But I wrote about how hyperstandardization and having
Hmm.
credentials, it kind of creates this. I'm going to put this in economic terms because I've been talking about that recently a lot on my TikTok, and I know people are going to be
Hmm.
coming over here because they really liked my critique of at least the whole economic
Hmm.
systems and things.
Hmm.
And it kind of creates this incentive for people to just check boxes and not actually do the work. They just want to know,
Yep.
okay, how can I beat the system instead of
Right.
what is the system teaching me? Because that
Right.
takes a lot more work.
Yep.
And what can be taught is also limited when you have check boxes because what needs to be taught can sometimes be omitted for sake of time
Yep.
or for other things, for
Yep.
other boxes to come in. And so that kind of creates this whole plagiarizing issue because people just want to check the box and they don't really want to put in much work. And people wonder why plagiarism is a big problem. But whatever, that's my thought. That's kind of me giving the absolute middle finger to standardized education. However, there is benefits to it too, is that you do have, like, you can see, oh, well, you have a degree, that means you played the system well. Oh, you have maybe you got straight A's, you played the system well.
When you graduate, nobody cares what your grades are unless you're going on to graduate school.
That is true.
The only people who care about your grades are other academics. I used to force employers to look at my grades because I got ulcers because I did my degrees very accelerated and
I'm doing
worked.
that too.
Yeah, and they'd be like, "Oh, we don't really care. You got the degree," and I'd be like, "Okay, we're gonna look at this." As my left eye is twitching, but yeah, just saying.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a whole thing, because I cannot tell you how many times people, and particularly in some business classes, they're like, "Oh, you're going to want to put your GPA on your resume," and I'm like, "I can guarantee you, I can put other things too that show me that, or show other people that I know a whole lot more than what a GPA could ever say." Just saying. When we hyper standardize things that much,
Yeah,
that is definitely a problem. However, the benefits is that there's a very clear, hey, I played the system well, I get this award or I get
yeah,
this credential. And you don't exactly get that as an
yeah,
astrologer or a psychic. The best
yeah,
thing you can do is have a track record, a
yeah.
recorded track record
Right.
on podcasts, websites, TikToks,
Yep.
Instagrams, Facebooks,
Yep.
whatever it is.
Yep. Yep.
That is
Lots.
your
Hmm.
resume.
Yep. Exactly.
And I think a lot of people, since I know astrology is now a rapidly growing audience, especially in
Hmm.
2025, people are starting to kind of see that having a track record and having experience, and not only
Hmm.
just having experience, but having quality experience.
Hmm.
Not just saying you did
Yeah.
some for 10, because I could be the worst crocheter for 10 years ever and not get any better because I didn't want to. I just did it because
Right.
people told me to. But having quality experience, having quality reviews, people are starting to see that that's actually better than just saying, "Oh, I was such and such. I've been a such and such medium for so long, and I'm a 21st generation. Whatever I was taught by spirit, or you know what I'm saying? Like it's really showing the amount of quality experiences becoming more important. People are seeing that. So with that
Yeah.
being said, since social media is a great way for people to see that, what are some common red flags when maybe astrologers, or I should say astrologists
Oh
online?
God. Okay, that's your first clue. If somebody calls themselves an astrologist, they're not real.
Very much
That
so.
is, he knew. He knew he was going to get me going. Fucking hate that. Zuckerberg has a lot to answer for. That's a Facebook creation. Astrologer is and has always been what we are called. Okay, go find some old books. It was never astrologist. That was a way to diminish what we do. So that's one way.
Yeah.
somebody says they have to fix astrology because they didn't understand the books, it means they weren't smart enough to understand actual real astrology. And I am speaking about one person in particular.
I was about to
Um,
say, I'm like, does this have something to do with
With the
that
guy that doesn't
guy?
understand math? Yeah, the guy that can't do math. Okay, I wasn't a great mathematician either, but I did, although I had a math professor who was a nuclear physicist who disagreed with that one. Because I do it in my head. So I have like dyscalculia. I can't do it out by hand, but it's like it's all happening. I can see all the trajectory, the movement. I rewind. It's like, it's very cool inside my head. If people say they're intuiting the astrology, it's not astrology then. You could tune in to a planetary energy, but that does not make it astrology. Astrology does not operate that way. Astrology is a framework of understanding. So an astrology chart is literally a map. We call it the rising sign because guess what? The sun rises in the east, the moon rises in the east. So do all the zodiac signs. It's the eastern point of the chart. So it's like an upside down map. If people demonize the signs, so like all Geminis are cheaters and all Scorpios are sex bots and all Sagittariuses are party animals, all Leos are braggers, or pick me's, all Cancers, are soft and weak. You hear that shit, red flag, because that isn't the case. That there is bad placements. If people are trying, this is the worst placement, this is the luckiest placement, move on. That's bad astrology. It might be commonplace, but that doesn't make it correct. Okay. There's a whole lot of people who agree that life begins at conception. It doesn't make it a fact. Okay. It does not. You can have your opinion all you want, but scientifically that would be incorrect.
And
Um,
plus, you can even see
mhm,
that, like, it really took me to really start learn, like, to actually really start studying astrology,
mhm.
particularly mundane astrology, to realize kind of the whole creation process of something, whether
Yeah.
it be an entity, whether it be a life form. Because, for
Mhm.
example, I remember when we were working on mundane astrology, and particularly business and locality charts.
Right. Mhm.
And you were like, you always want to use the most current form when
Right.
that was created
Yeah.
as the chart, like as the day when to put the chart, because
Mhm.
that is the current expression of
Yes.
that thing.
Yeah.
So if something was conceived, but it didn't have agency yet, and then it was birthed, and now it has the ability to wiggle their arms around,
Mhm.
isn't it not
Yeah,
its
we don't
current?
run conception charts. That's the other
Right.
thing. When
Like,
people say if you've had a C, if you were birthed from a C-section, bad astrology. If they say it impacts it. If you were a preemie, it changed your chart. No, you were born and took your first breath and were viable on the day you were born. It doesn't matter what your due date was. Okay, it's the day you were born. That's when you inhabited a physical body. What else is my red flags?
what about the people who say, "Oh, if you have any third degree placements, that
Oh,
means that you
Jesus.
are."
Okay, so degree theory is not real. It's like Eastern European superstition. Okay. The guy who did it, and I've taken a lot of heat for this on there because he has like a really strong group of devotees and he's passed away. And they'd be like, well, he's dead. Would you say it to his face if he was alive? I'm like, yeah, I would because we actually do peer review in astrology. And 1,500 charts was not a big enough sample size to say for certain anything happened. I don't agree with a 1,500 person medical study. There's
Yeah.
8 billion people on this planet.
Plus, 1,500 was how many charts I read for the first year that I was an astrologer. That was how many
Right.
charts I
But if
looked
you're
at.
doing research on something, you would want, like, especially if you're looking at degrees, you'd want 1,500 charts per degree. You wouldn't
Right.
want just 1,500 charts. And what was the control? Like, you can still do empirical study with astrology. The astrologers were the original scientists. The other thing is people call it the ancient art of astrology. Yes and no, it's evolved over time. Our astrological symbols came to be in around 1530. Okay, the one astrological symbol that stayed consistent since Sumeria is the moon. Everything else has changed. Mercury comes a little bit from ancient Greece. Venus comes a little bit, but even that changed. They used to have little tails.
Yeah.
And I went through that in my Planet of the Month club. I explained the
Yeah.
history of the symbols.
And didn't Venus and Mercury used to not have that little extra line at the bottom, but they were added for during the
They were
Spanish
added
Inquisition?
during the Renaissance because of
Yeah.
Christianity, because astrologers were under the gun. Like Copernicus had a problem, Galileo Galilei had a problem. They weren't just astronomers; they were astrologers. The subject matter didn't split until the Age of Reason, and so that's just how it was. And probably because there were goofballs. Like there's work from the 10th and 11th century in the Islamic Empire where mullahs, the priests, argued over what was okay and not okay astrology because you had frauds in the marketplace telling people their exes were coming back even back then, and then you had people like us who did real research, and so there's these written debates from back then. So it's always kind of been a problem because
Yeah.
people either, yeah.
And this is the one that just grinds my gears the most. And when I say this, my Sag Sun and Moon is going to come out so hard. Okay, and I think you know what I'm going to say. It's those people who say that they've read one book or have taken one class, and then they are now the expert and know all be all. Or the people who come on my comment section on a TikTok and say that they don't want to pay for a class because they can get free classes on YouTube.
Oh, I saw that. And you know what? You get what you pay for.
That's exactly what I said.
And for all the people who say they can't afford it, I started studying astrology. First of all, I had a mentor. I didn't have books because I couldn't get them where in the country I lived, and it was a little bit illegal to do it. Where there's a will, there's a way. So I was like 2 years in before I got reference books. Otherwise, it was a 20-page email. And he was a very generous teacher. But I did other stuff for him in return. So it was a sharing of skills. Okay. And he was in another country, but, I would analyze data for him and things like that and that kind of thing. But when I got to the States, I was a single mom. And I didn't have any money. So guess what I did? I saved my money. And then I started taking, well, the first thing I did, because you can get certified in some, this is the problem like with college, right? You can gain a skill in college, and even if you go to trade school, right? It doesn't matter what it is. But what they don't teach you how to do is get the job or how to
Exactly.
keep a job, or, you don't learn how, like, you might go to business school, but you're not really taught how to start a business. You have to go to like a combinator for that. You have to go to workshops for that. There's always
Well,
professional development.
actually,
Mm-hmm.
I actually took an entrepreneurship class. Luckily, UCA is one of
Mm-hmm.
the first universities in Arkansas to offer entrepreneurship as a
Mm-hmm.
major, which is literally starting your own business. The book
Right.
that the book that was for that class, it was literally $11. Notice how the textbooks for entrepreneurship are dirt cheap because it is
Yeah.
not in demand. And I was one of maybe 11 people in that whole class, and they only offer
That's
that class
great.
one time a year.
That's
And
great.
yeah, and I got that book, and when I tell you, I recommended it on my Patreon. I
I
recommended it
love it.
everywhere to everyone because it is so easy to find online. It literally costs absolutely nothing.
That's
And
great.
it's called How to Start a Business in 100 Days by Bruce Barringer.
Oh, I've seen
And
that. Yeah,
yeah,
that's a great book. Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
literally a step-by-step guide
Right.
as to how you form it. And it
Right.
doesn't give you legal advice, obviously. It
Right.
tells you how to seek it, it tells you how to
Right.
start, but it doesn't tell you what to do. And
Right.
that's what I liked about that book.
No, that's great. That's great reference.
Yeah.
One of the other things is, so when you start practicing as an astrologer, how to start and end a session, how to
Oh
deal with
yeah.
challenging clients. The same in the coaching world. Like you get certified and there's practice sessions, but learning how to start and stop, how to stay on time. That's something I bang into people that I teach, because you can, in your enthusiasm, you can give away your time, and that's something you don't get back. It's not really about the money, it's about your energy levels.
Well, I remember one of the very first sessions that me and you had when I became a mentee was how to start and stop a reading
Yep.
and when to know when to go over and when to not go over. Because, for
Yeah.
example, the I've gone over twice. Out of all the
Hmm.
readings I've ever done, I've only gone over twice, and there's two
Hmm.
reasons for that. It was tech difficulties,
Hmm.
and it was also error on my end. I made a mistake in
Hmm.
typing up
Hmm.
the information for the chart, and so that was
Hmm.
my fault. And so I went and I rectified the situation by going over that same amount of time over.
Hmm.
But it's
Hmm.
things like that. I don't just go over because I feel like it.
Right.
You know.
I go over when I see somebody people come to me often at a crossroads, and sometimes they're making very, very difficult decisions. And if I've seen, and it's never because the client wants to go over, it's because I see they may need a little bit extra to feel secure in their decision making. I don't make the decisions for them. But I offer guidance on how to check with themselves on is it a good decision or not, so to how to trust their own knowing. And sometimes people need a little more help with that. If people are credible, they'll have evidence. You brought that up. No one is 100% accurate. If people are doing predictions, just know there is no one person who's 100% accurate. I've never claimed to be 100% accurate. I've always said I'm 87% accurate. I run as high as 92%, but year on end, about 87%. And if you understand statistics, that's exceptionally high. Most people don't understand. They think of it like a test and they think, oh, you got to be plus. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Over a 30-year period, 87% of my predictions have come to pass. Statistically, that's almost impossible. Anything above 55% is accurate because 50-50 is a coin toss.
Well, that's when you have a large sample size, or like a large enough sample size. Because
Yeah, exactly.
if you just do four things, like, and you get three of the four right, that's still kind
Right.
of like 75% for four. That's still, you
Right,
may need a little bit
exactly.
more. Yeah.
Exactly. So
So,
the thing with and then I don't care if people are humble or not humble. I don't think that's an indicator of talent. And
yeah,
I think women should not be humble. We're born humbled. So I think women need to do have a little bit more moxie, but it's okay if they don't. Some of the best astrologers in the world are not on social media,
that is very true.
and a lot of them don't like people. So they're researchers.
Well, like you said, we're very nerdy, you know?
Hmm.
Like doing stuff
Hmm. We
on
are the
social media.
nerds.
Doing stuff on social media was quite a learning curve for me because
I made
as
you do it.
yeah. And so I really at first, I grew up, I had a YouTube channel growing up and I did little toy reveal videos, you could probably still find some of those deep down in the
Oh,
internet archives
I'm
somewhere.
gonna go look for those now.
Yeah, you might can find them in I just be in my little PJs and I'd be like, look, I'm unboxing a Shopkins collection or something.
Oh,
It was the cutest little thing, and I'd do it with my
nobody
sister,
that.
and they'd just be little unedited videos, and I'd just post
So
them up there.
cute.
And so I grew up doing stuff like that. So it wasn't like I didn't know how to. It was
Mhm.
more so I just didn't want to. I
Right,
did then because I wanted to experiment with it. It was the Sag in
right,
me. I was like, I want to try
right,
it. Everyone's doing
right,
it at school and it's really cool. I just want to try it, see if I like it.
right,
And I liked it. But now that I got older, I'm like, I actually really like books more. I like being
right,
at home more. I like
right.
doing my own thing more. I don't really
Right.
like being in the public eye, but I still do it because
But you have to market if you're gonna run a business. You
exactly.
know, and if you're gonna be of service, people, you can't be the best kept secret. You just can't. I don't blame people for wanting to be content creators and make an income. I just think people claim expertise where they don't have any. I get very annoyed when people talk about degree theory. It's bullshit. It's not real. Anaretic degrees are part of classical and traditional astrology. People say Western tropical astrology was stolen from Vedic. That couldn't be further from the truth. They are,
They're two different frames of reference.
well, they are. They have a common ancestor. It just shows me people haven't studied, and I can understand people being annoyed at colonialism, but Western tropical astrology is not a product of colonialism, unless you talk about colonialism from a Bronze Age perspective. Um, it isn't okay. They're two different, they're both valid. One's not better than the other. They come from different philosophical determinations. So anybody saying one's better than the other, whether it's a Western tropical astrologer saying Vedic sex or a Vedic astrologer saying Western tropical sex, that's bullshit and they're probably not very good. I have friends who are Vedic. We are often fascinated by how we come up with similar answers, even though we use different systems. So, the real McCoy, when people are really professional at what they do, they tend to be excited to meet other people like them, especially when we're kind of obscure in what we do. People who refer to themselves as Hellenists or traditional astrologers tend not to be very well studied.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's not everybody. There are those who are well studied, but they can explain why they do what they do besides bringing up a person. Like if they're like, well, this person says it's the best, that's not a good answer.
Yeah, that's not really using
That's
independent
not,
thinking.
no, it's not.
That's like
Um,
saying, well, my mommy said so, so it must be true.
right.
Well, my
Yeah.
mommy was an alcoholic, so I don't think that really does anything.
Right. There's that Sag just popping off. What are other red flags?
I think one of another red flag that I see a lot is when astrologers are like, if you have any placements in Virgo, Taurus, or Capricorn, you're going to have a terrible 2025.
Yeah, the trying to get people to be afraid in any way, shape, or form. Because an astrologer is really a consultant. And so we wouldn't dictate this is good or bad. We would be like,
Right.
hey, if you have Capricorn placements in April of 2025 or 2026, these are the things you maybe need to be on the lookout for. It's always going to have conditional language. A real astrologer uses could, might, could be, because the future isn't really set in stone. And no, we're not. If they talk about jumping timelines, that just means they're really shitty at what they do. We're not jumping timelines. An individual, no, so let's look at probability and possibility. So this is probability. All this, the fan of probability, it is all probable. And then we move into possibility. So it halves at possibility, right? Or possibility and probability. So probability halves. On the fan of probability, if you're here, it would be unlikely to just jump over here. Usually you kind of zig and zag over to another area. However, you're a human being with agency. And let's say it's a life or death situation when you hear about the little tiny mama picking up a car to rescue her child, or that is when we as individuals can jump from here to here. It'll all be represented in the chart. All these probabilities are represented. We look for, you're already here. It's only going to be likely to about here. The unlikely could happen. And that's why sometimes in my Patreon, I give percentages. I'm like, it could happen. I'm giving it a 2% shot.
I do a
So
lot
it's,
of that kind of stuff too.
yeah, it's not out of the realm of possibility. It's just very unlikely.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people don't understand that. I had somebody kind of be snarky with me on my TikTok this last week going, how is that astrology when it seems logical and reasoning? And I was good. I re-recorded it like 3 times. But I was like, well, first of all, I wrote these predictions last year before any of this was obvious. Second of all, I refine them every single month. So before any of these events happened, and I get you're not from here. So, you didn't know. And again, now there are people out there, some are well known, who aren't necessarily great astrologers, but they don't do any harm. Like if people are just giving like nice messages, trying to help people and being like, hey, today you can like really work on your self-esteem and your self-care. It may not be accurate, but it's not hurting anybody. I don't really care about that.
Yeah.
I
Well,
just,
the only when I start caring about that is when people look to those people for astrology, like actual astrology advice. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
they wanted to learn it.
Well, there's a lot of that in Barnes and Noble. So
Yeah.
I'm going to say some of the best-selling books actually aren't very good at astrology. And some of the best books can't get published, and people have to self-publish them because they're not commercial. And so that's something to know. Just like if an astrologer is self-publishing, it's probably good information. Usually, not always. You want to double check, see what their track record is. Like on my website, we have a review page now, and people can read through all the astrologers' reviews thanks to Susie.
Oh yeah,
Um,
you did get that new website. I forgot about that.
well, she rebranded it. Yeah, it's my
Hmm.
old site. It's just looks better now.
Yeah.
So it's more in the direction I want to go. So
I
I'm
remember
I'm
I
not
remember the one you had
yeah.
back in 2022.
That well, that was from 20. Oh, okay, yeah, because I changed it from the original in
Yeah.
2020.
That
Yeah.
I remember when you first got the gift card feature and it was that one. Like that was the one that I remember first seeing when I first found you on TikTok and I'm like, I gotta know more about what
Mhm.
this lady is talking about. And so I wanted to see, hey, does she write articles? Well, yes, but I have to get the Wix app. Okay, well I'll do that. And then I read them all literally in one night. But then I
Well,
did
I didn't blog that. I blogged some, and then because I wasn't on TikTok
yeah.
and I was on Reddit incognito
Oh yeah, I remember you telling me
answering,
about that.
yeah, answering a lot of questions. And what I do is I'd write a blog post, and which all of those are very relevant to right now because right now is an extension of what was going on then. That was the detonator. That's the other thing people don't understand, and I don't necessarily think. I mean, it's not great astrology, but I don't think people have had the privilege of working with really, really good mentors. Like I was really lucky. I've always had really good teachers, really good mentors in any subject I've studied, right? That ninth house of mine. Most people don't understand how time actually functions, and they don't actually understand that a transit isn't a single momentary event. It actually is like the ringing of a gong, and depending on the size of the gong, the reverberation of the sound, like sound waves keep going long after your hearing can register it. And so like 2025 is an extension of 2020. So like the Jenga tower fell, and now people are sweeping the blocks off the table. So it's 2025 and 2026 are going to be a little more destabilizing, but it doesn't mean we're screwed. We get through this. We get through it, we make it. But that would be the thing. I think we're never going to stop the frauds. I kind of give up on it anymore. I'm like, I don't know. I give up. I used to like try to do an aesthetic, just try to get people. Now I don't care.
I do it
I'm like,
every so often, just experiment with it.
mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of it. It's like more like, and I got talked out. See, I would do more because I am a Scorpio rising. I prefer more making creepy, scary videos because I get accused of being a fearmonger. Try living in my head, people. Try my worst case scenarios. And when I would do more of an Elvira like look or a Bride of Frankenstein look just for fun. And because I sometimes feel like the public does deserve to be freaked out. And because I get annoyed at people commenting on my videos that have no interest in what I do, but they just want to troll. Oh, God, funniest thing. There is an account called Citizen Troll, which,
Okay.
first of all, I thought that was a great username. Okay. But they came onto one of my videos and said I sounded like a Timu, like I sounded like a Timu QAnoner, which I thought was funny. I thought that was great. I did not sound like a Timu QAnoner at the time, but it was very funny. But I was like, my response was, your troll game is lame. They deleted their comment. I trolled the troll. And I'm like, I troll on purpose for fun, incognito, but not other astrologers. I usually do it to evangelical.
Oh yeah. Because those are so easy. No, literally, trolling evangelical
So easy.
Christians. You can literally be like, "What do you think of your father naked?" And they think that that is a troll. I'm
Oh,
like,
so you're
like,
on the side of Lot, are you?
yeah.
I was a Sunday school teacher. Go ahead, come at me.
Because it's usually the people who were so like conservative in their thinking, and I'm not talking about like politically conservative.
No,
I
no,
mean,
no, just
but like
narrow.
just very
Yeah.
narrow. Like they think that
Mhm.
like it has to be a certain way, and there's like very clear boundaries. Like there's not like
Mhm.
room for any wiggle room.
There's a lot of people who don't even understand what we do. They think they know what we do, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
they're the same people who blame the weatherman for being wrong on a forecast. Forecasting and prediction is exactly the same thing. Forecast means to speak before the event. Prediction means to speak before the event. Forecast means to show the event ahead of time.
Mm,
It's the same shit.
it
Okay.
is.
It's just people make up definitions and what they think. And this was a problem of mine when I was in academia. And I love learning. I mean, obviously, you can tell I'm a big nerd. My
Same.
biggest problem is they can't recognize their cognitive bias if it bites them in the ass.
Oh, for sure.
Um, it's it's
100%.
it's there is the rare exception, and I had some amazing professors who were willing to question their own deeply ingrained academic dogma. But a lot of times when they're trying to poo-poo astrology, it just literally shows their ignorance. And if they're quoting Neil deGrasse Tyson, it's further showing their ignorance. I wouldn't really question him on astrophysics. I'm not an astrophysicist, but every time he speaks about astrology, all it shows to me is he has not studied it or done anything other than read a Cosmo horoscope. I would
It's the same
love
behavior.
to debate him.
Oh, I'm sure you do, because I would also love to debate him. Just as much as there is a lot of people with major dogma and cognitive bias in academia, there's also so many more who want to
That are
actually
open.
learn.
Yeah, and open. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
because
Hmm.
I got people who originally came up to me when they found out that I did what I did at the beginning of the school year last year, and they thought
Hmm.
that I was insane, that I was a nut job, that I needed to go to the psych ward and all the
Yes,
things.
it's the risk we face.
Yeah. But then after
Hmm.
that lecture,
Hmm.
people were like, "Oh my God, I had no idea there's actually a methodology to it. There's actually something that."
Well
Yeah.
done. I'm proud of
Yeah.
you.
So we had a really great conversation this week with Laurie Rivers. Thank you so much for coming on. It was such a pleasure.
My pleasure.
Yeah. And so kind of tell us a little bit about where people can find you if they want to find more information about you. So where can people seek that out?
Well, if TikTok's still around, you can find me at I'm Real Astrologer Laurie on TikTok. You can find my website at wokeastrology.com. That keeps the QAnoners away. And you can also find me at the Awake Space Astrology podcast. And my Patreon is also called the Awake Space. I write free articles and things. In fact, I've got a series that's ongoing, kind of doing what we talked about today, just kind of explaining what astrology is, what it isn't. And to me, it isn't enough to have astrology to have another labeling system. I use astrology, so teaching people how to use their astrology has been my calling, even though I do predictions and what have you. That's not that that's my way of getting people's attention, improving accuracy. My calling is truly to help empower people be their very most aligned self at any given moment, and alignment is a constant calibration. So I'm writing about that in the Patreon. I've decided to write more because I'm a writer first. Damn it.
Yes.
But yeah. Anyway, thank you, Eli. It's always a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
Yeah, and we'll have to have you on again sometime soon because people love it. People love our conversations that we have, especially since I think a lot of people really like to see what the mentor mentee relationship looks like, kind of like behind the scenes, and being able to
Right.
have a podcast where we can share kind of a little bit of what conversations we talk about.
We
And
do. We
yeah,
nerd out.
thank y'all so much for tuning in this week, and I'll see y'all tomorrow.